Welcome to episode 283 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, we learn how NBA players leverage social audiences with brands that align with Brandon Curran.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who's writing these intros listening to Brain FM, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan. I do love a bit of Brain FM in the morning. Brain FM is a software as a service. You go and dial in brain.fm, I believe is the link, but Google Brain FM, and it plays just random music, and it's meant to put you in a mood and get you in that zone. And so whenever I am stuck, whether it's writing or getting something done or getting some emails out the door or writing the weekly Sports Geek news, a lot of the time I will go to Brain FM and click a button and put on maybe the dance grooves or maybe some piano. And it just gets me in a zone and I get the work done. So, yeah, check it out. If you're having some troubles working from home and stuck on a job and feel like you're just spinning around, Brain FM, it's a bit of a hack. It gets me started. Otherwise, you can contact me because I haven't mentioned them yet. You can go check out the website, sportsgeekhq.com. That's where you can find the podcast. This podcast should be available on all platforms. As I mentioned earlier, you can also find our newsletter that comes out on a weekly basis, Sports Geek News, sometimes written with Brain FM in the background. You can sign up for that at sportsgeekhq.com/SGN. Or you can contact me the old-fashioned way, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Please give me some feedback on the podcast. Are you enjoying the podcast? What other podcasts you listen to? Give me some feedback on what is working and what you think I should change. The podcast has changed over the years, and a lot of that is due to listener feedback. One thing that has changed a lot over the pandemic and this lockdown period has been the Sports Biz Zoom calls. They have been my success of COVID. Please come along to our next one, sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls, RSVP every week, different topic every single week. This week we're talking about developing new fan bases. Next week we're talking about sports in 2030. It's also going to be talking to different people from different parts of the world, North America, Europe, South Africa, and also here in my part of the world, Australia and New Zealand. It's great to have different people. And don't forget, if you are a Sports Geek Patreon subscriber, you can watch the replays. There are now 8 calls waiting there for you to watch on stadiums and venues, redesigning sport, ticketing in 2021, and last week's chat on millennials and sports. So check that out. They're all available at sportsgeekhq.com once you've signed in and logged in as a patron. And I'm giving a shout out as I need to welcome new Patreon supporters, Jamison Doyle from G2G Sports, who's signed up as a startup supporter. Thank you very much, Jamison. And Julianne Hamilton, thank you very much for signing up as a personal supporter. All very much welcomed and appreciative of all of your support for the efforts that we're putting in to keep the sports business world connected via podcasts, via newsletters, via Zoom calls. So please check out sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Really excited about this week's guest because Brandon Curran from Catalyst Sports, he is my first guest via Lunch Club. So send me an email if you're interested in Lunch Club and you want an invite to Lunch Club, because Lunch Club's pretty cool and a good way to meet people when you're not allowed to go and meet people in real life anyway. So yes, this is my chat with Brandon Curran from Catalyst Sports. Very happy to welcome Brandon Curran. He is the VP of Player Marketing and Business Development at Catalyst Sports. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Thank you for having me.
I think actually, so before we get started, I think you're actually my first Lunch Club 2 podcast guest. So welcome. So we met, and I've spoken about Lunch Club as a platform. We met a couple of weeks ago on Lunch Club, and it did a really good job from the algorithm point of view to match us up, because we have common interest in the world of sports and digital and athletes and the like. So it was good that happened. But we're not here to talk about Lunch Club. We're here to talk about you. How did you get your start in the world of sports?
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles. So I grew up playing baseball and basketball. Was really in love with basketball, and this was around 2006, 2009. Really loved the LA basketball scene, and this was when like Max Preps was really big. So you kind of just heard about guys like I heard about James Harden, played against like Drew Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, Solomon Hill, and like that's when I really kind of fell in love with the space. And to be frank, I thought I had a chance to go to the NBA, and then I realized, well, that's not going to happen. So the best thing I did was like, well, I can work at an agency. So I went to school at UC Berkeley in the Bay Area, and I was like, all right, let me just kind of immerse myself in sports because I didn't really have any connections from anyone I knew or family members or anything. So I started working for the athletics department. That led to something with the Golden State Warriors. After my sophomore year, I interned at CAA in their sports group, which was a really good experience. Then I did various other agency internships. I worked for IMG College, who had the Cal media rights. After graduation, I worked for Wasserman in their sports brand consulting group, which was a cool perspective because everything I'd done previously was on the player side, and then I saw it from the brand perspective. And then going from there, in early 2014, I started working for my current boss, Happy Walters, Relativity Sports. I started as his second assistant, which is a really interesting role because I never really done like an assistant job before, and I had all these great experiences, but it's kind of the rite of passage you have to go through. So I did that.
So was that effectively shadowing Happy and seeing what he was doing and picking up anything that needed to be done in the space?
No, that was more so like if you're familiar with Entourage, I was very much like Lloyd. So answering phones, scheduling meetings. I always tell people that his Starbucks order is forever tattooed in my brain. Venti skinny vanilla latte with an extra shot. So kind of doing that. But when I was in that role, I really focused on like, yes, I want to be a great assistant, but I also want to show my value outside of just doing the everyday tasks. So I kind of took on a lot of different projects. I learned PowerPoint. I retaught myself Excel. I was able to do a lot of our recruiting presentations for players, and that kind of helped build up my abilities and my exposure to different groups. And from there, we started Catalyst Sports in 2015 to focus on NBA basketball and esports advisory. And I was able to kind of take my role as doing our business development, doing recruiting decks, stuff like that. And then did some local marketing deals like car dealership stuff. And then from there was able to really kind of build and accelerate. And now I handle all of our NBA player marketing and business development. So essentially anything our guys do off the court is in my purview. And we represent NBA players like Marcus Smart, RJ Hampton, Iman Shumpert, Jeremy Grant, Lonnie Walker, Landry Shamet, Romeo Langford, and a few other guys as well.
So effectively, like you said, you learnt the biz by being around the biz, and then you started working in the space on those off-court opportunities. And so that is your role now on the player marketing.
Yeah.
So at the moment, the current market, what are sponsors looking for from an athlete? And in whether it is a star like Marcus Smart or some of the young guys, what are they looking for from an athlete from a digital point of view?
Yeah, I mean, so this was a really interesting period because everything kind of came down in March and no one really knew how to activate. So a lot of some brands were kind of just taken aback and pulling away. But certain brands like Chipotle, who's very proactive and kind of creative in their marketing, they're like, this is the time to take advantage. People are going to be at home playing video games. So they hosted a Call of Duty tournament, which we had 3 of our clients in, Marcus, Romeo, and RJ. And that was a really cool experience. So one of the hardest parts of my job usually, especially during the season, actually isn't getting them sponsorships. It's getting them sponsorships that can fit within their schedule. Because if you take a look at a standard NBA calendar, you really, like on my end, I really hope for a 2-day gap in their schedule. Like that would be really nice. Like there's a lot of nights when it's just like one off, one on, one off, one on. So this actually gave a pretty good opportunity where these guys' schedules were wide open. So we were able to do a ton at that time. So that was really good. More so now what you're seeing is, although the Orlando field kind of feels like summer league in terms of casualness, the guys are actually very focused. So a lot of our guys are kind of just focusing in on making playoffs and going from there. But initially, like in the beginning of quarantine, it was a really interesting opportunity where the guys actually had open schedules. So we were able to take advantage of that.
And from a pre-COVID point of view, when you are out there pitching, players, so you've obviously got the issue of scheduling.
Mhm.
Like, how do you manage one? Because you're out there all the time. I'm guessing pitching your guys or pitching your stable or talking to brands to try to figure out what they're looking for. How does that process work? Is it brand led? Are the brands coming to you saying we want to do something in the space? Are you having those conversations with brands and then crafting something with one or multiple people in your stable? How do you go through that process as part of your business development?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wish it was more brands coming to us, but I would say 95% of the time it's outreach. Like, I even went back once and kind of just did hey, how many of these came to us and how many did we have to reach out for? And majority of it, 90% is you have to reach out. And I always tell brands what's cool about how we operate is NBA players, fortunately, are very well compensated. So they make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year. And what that really affords them is the right to be very particular about who they partner with. So I live in Los Angeles, for example, and we have influencers. They're running around everywhere. They're doing 4 or 5 brand deals a month so they can pay their rent. Our guys don't need to do that. Yeah. So I have a really close relationship with our guys and really know their passions. So when I reach out to a company, I usually have a few players in mind. There are certain companies where we'll have overlap and a lot of guys will be interested, like a Chipotle, a Call of Duty, a Verizon, a Sweetgreen, something like that. But usually when I reach out, I know this guy already has an existing passion. And that's what really helps separate too. So I'm always on social media. If I told you my iPhone screen time, you'd be like, well, Brandon, you need to find other things to do. But I'm always on social media following our guys. And if they post something that they don't even realize is showing off a brand or them using a product, I'll screenshot that, send it to the brand and talk to them. And that little example really gives them a leg up against other people who are me just telling you, hey, our guy's a fan of XYZ brand. I can ship that. So it's really player led in the sense that I know their passions and their interests, and I try to build out opportunities around there. And just what I've learned in my experience is when a guy is into something, he'll post more than he has to. He'll show up early. If it's a production shoot, he'll stay late if he has to. And he'll even contribute his own ideas, and he'll be way more engaged. And when he's more engaged, when he puts that out there, it's not going to be one of those very structured deals that you could tell was just for compensation. You can tell this guy's actually passionate about it. And then that leads to more deals down the line, which has helped us in the past.
And do you think that, I guess, selectiveness, they're not required to doing it, is that the differentiator that an athlete has as opposed to an influencer, in that they are, pitching their follower base to fans, and like you said, it's their primary income? Do you think the selectiveness and the passion point is the difference piece for an athlete?
Yeah, and I also think if you just take a look at it from an analytics perspective, NBA players, their social media engagement is literally off the charts. We have guys with millions of followers that have about 7% engagement, all the way up to guys like Romeo Langford, for example. He's about 200,000 Instagram followers, and on any given post, he can get 40 to 50,000 likes, which if you think about it, that's pretty crazy, a 25% engagement rate. And a lot of those traditional influencers that you're referring to, I think more so since I think when fans see them, they see okay, this person is an influencer. There's less barriers to entry to that. So there might be a less of this person's more so on a pedestal. But when I see someone who's in the NBA, you know how hard it is to get to that point. So I think there's more so of an admiration there, and thus leads to larger engagement. And the people and our clients really do connect with their fans. And a lot of these people have been following them since they're 13, 14 years old on Instagram.
And so from a player development point of view, how do you help, like you're talking about there, Romeo Langford as a rookie, how do you lift up your younger guys? Is there much work that you're doing to, one, train them up, or is there a little bit of how do we pair them up with a more senior guy, both from a skill level and a social ability and experience in the scene? How do you go about, I guess, lifting all of your client roster that want to be in the space and be active in digital?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we often will hear about, or I'll be talking to some brand, and we'll start with one guy, and then hopefully it works with that guy. But if not, then oftentimes in the past we've been able to pivot to someone else who maybe has is also interested or more available in the product. But it all really starts with the player. So we really like to, and there's a common misconception. A lot of people think like, oh, do you run your client's social media? It's like, A, I would never want to do that. That would be the most laborious thing ever. And B, and more importantly, it would be super inauthentic. And it kind of ties to a larger point, I believe, in where brands are starting to understand that like you can't beat a player's voice on a subject matter. So you need to let them be themselves because they know their audience better than anyone else. It kind of varies deal by deal, but when you have like that really intrinsic passion, you're able to kind of build out opportunities from there. And Chipotle is a great example of someone who we've had a number of guys who love Chipotle. Everyone loves Chipotle. And we've been able to go through there and partner up a few guys and then do really cool integrations where it's not just your standard one guy, it's featuring two guys or even more.
So you mentioned that, you did a Marcus Smart prank video where he did the rookie prank, on YouTube. How does that deal come together? Are you just coming up with a concept and bringing the guys and the Chipotle content marketing team are doing it, or is it you guys producing the whole piece and handing over the piece of content and the social amplification from the players? How do you guys put together that as a concept?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of times, I would say majority of times, the creative is brand led because they kind of know their goals and they have a specific vision. But what I really like about Chipotle that's really cool for a company that size that's publicly traded, they're very nimble in terms of their marketing, and they're also very open, and they do a lot of stuff that's experimental. So that was really cool where our guy, Romeo Langford, we had recently signed him. He's class of 2019 or NBA, the 2019 draft class. We just signed him and we knew he was a big Chipotle fan. So we had worked with Chipotle in the past and we'd gotten the celebrity cards. I don't know if you've seen those before, but they basically allow these players to go to a Chipotle every day of the week, every day of the year, and get free Chipotle with guacamole and everything. So it's funny because, and this kind of speaks to Chipotle, they've created something that maybe's face value at its peak is worth $4,000 if you went every day and got Chipotle every day. But there's actually a mystique around this card where like players want it and players ask me for it, and they don't always give it to everybody. So it's actually just cool. But previously people would send it and then they would post it on their Instagram story and that would be the end of that. So I was kind of just tired of seeing that and I felt it was a wasted opportunity. So for that specific prank opportunity, I came up with the idea and then we kind of worked with Chipotle on it to flesh it out of like, okay, we have two guys on the Celtics. We have Marcus Smart, who's the most veteran on the team, and then we have Romeo, who's the rookie on the team. So that just kind of works out. And then we're like, they're both Chipotle fans. So let's do something where they both can get celebrity cards and then build off that. So we thought, let's do something unique and creative. And it just worked out well where we told Romeo that I had to be involved with this because I had to kind of lead on. So from a coordinating perspective, I had to make sure Marcus got to the Chipotle, and then I had to get in an Uber to go get Romeo. It was this whole production. And he basically pulls up and we told him he's going to a card signing. And then I was like, oh, let's stop at Chipotle. They just released their new like carnitas flavor. And then we go through and you'll obviously be able to see in the video. But what was really cool about it is it was 100% one take, authentically shot. Romeo, that was his genuine reaction. And what's cool is it blew up across social media. Like over like 50 publications wrote about it. It had millions of impressions and it wasn't even paid. Like if you go look at that YouTube video, that has over, I think 300,000 views now. And that's completely organic, which really speaks to building a story and a narrative. And the existing narrative there was, okay, the senior guy in the team pranks the younger guy. And not to spoil it, but basically Romeo showed up and they told him he owed $4,500 to buy some burritos. And what's really cool later is we've done other activations with Romeo, Marcus, and Chipotle, where people will then comment on a post later and be like, hey, did Romeo ever pay for those $4,500 in burritos? And that's what I love and get excited about, because then you're creating a storyline and a narrative and you barely can see it's like a sponsored post. It feels like, oh, this is just a story and something that happened at a Chipotle.
Yeah, and it's the key to a good piece of branded content, and I guess the bit that I'm fascinated in, and I guess the listeners are is the machinations of pulling that together, the jumping through hoops of working with a brand marketing team to know that it's still on point, and delivering for what they want to do, and then and then once it's out, the bit of byplay of, Romeo going, oh, I got punked, and again playing along with the bit to let fans have fun and feel like they're part of that inner circle.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the metrics and things like that. What are some of the tools that you use to keep an eye on and track the metrics for your players? Is there a tool that you lean on that can keep track of what's happening on Instagram and what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on their different socials? What do you use?
Fortunately, I have a lot of our guys' logins, so I'm able to kind of see their back end, and I take a look at that semi-regularly just to see what trends are going on, like how their impressions are doing, their posts and stuff.
Yep.
And Instagram has a very robust platform. Twitter's is pretty good as well. And then we've been doing a little bit on TikTok too. So that's mainly where we get it from. We kind of go directly to the.
So just going for the native analytics, you're not pulling it in any system or using any sort of back end system to get some of those reports?
No, not using any like third party systems. We've explored them in the past, but we haven't found one that really kind of valued the sticker price in terms of like what they're asking for. Like, it's nice and they aggregate and it looks good too, but if you have and not everyone has the ability to go right in and see what their analytics are, but if you're able to go right in there and see, it tells a more kind of holistic story.
So the other thing is, and you mentioned Entourage before, and the other one will people will be like, is your life like Ballers, right? which is the other one.
Yeah.
Part of managing athletes, especially in a social and digital age, is some of the pitfalls in the space. Whether those pitfalls are driven by the player, athletes doing silly things online, which we know happen, and then the other one is dealing with fans and the feedback and the abuse issues and trolling and those kind of things. How do you manage those two issues as a player agent and sort of helping look after their digital presence?
Yeah, so it's a great question. What we really want to do is when we first sign them, we really kind of sit down with them and explain like, okay, like everything you've been doing, every team is categorizing this. They have someone they're going through all your tweets. They're finding any issues, like they're doing really deep dives. So you need to be aware. And what's nice really about NBA guys is when we tell them this, it's not the first time they've heard it. Like a lot of our guys were on Team USA and they've gone through this process. Like most of our guys, when we get them now, are verified, which is pretty crazy to think about. They get verified in college or sometimes even in high school. So that's kind of where we really focus on. And then trolling is not something we've really had a big issue with. I think it's kind of interesting that when a player does clap back at a troll, it kind of really like resonates with a lot of the fans, and they really kind of see this player as being one of themselves. But usually these guys are so inundated with like DMs and comments on their posts that one person saying something to get attention really doesn't affect them. And then oftentimes their fans will come to their defense saying like, why are you here if you're going to come and hate or anything? So kind of just letting the guys make sure to like have an authentic voice. You have your real fans, and they've kind of been very well aware of like, there's trolls out there who are just going to seek attention and comments and likes.
I mean, the thing is that I think it varies on platform to platform. I think some platforms are worse than others. And it can, the idea is, yes, it does become white noise. Doesn't mean it's good. But I do think there is an ability. There should be more done in the, Twitter is the classic one where people say it's the worst, but, jump into an Instagram comments of a professional athlete if you want to see what, it's happening there as well. I think it's also the function of some of the devices that put it more in your face. Like it's very easy to ignore all the Instagram comments. You just don't go in there. Whereas if you go into Twitter and you just see your feed, you'll see someone. But it is an interesting thing. It's a current issue here, and I wonder if it will become more of an issue in the US as gambling becomes more prevalent.
Really? Okay.
So what we're seeing in the Australian market is players being abused because someone's multi-bet didn't come off because they didn't hit their total to have a $5 multi result in $100 or $1,000 or whatever. And so that's the current stream, that's the current narrative here in Australia. Are
they saying it specifically, like you lost me in this bet, or are they just hating generally? And then it's
I hate you. I hate you because you cost me $100 multi bet, and like so the players are clapping back, and some of them aggressively, and some of them jokingly. Sorry guys, I didn't kick a goal. I owe you all a beer. And so there's two ways to handle it, but it does, it does open up the players if they're on those platforms to some of that feedback, which is, for mine, some of them block. My advice is always just mute the person. They don't know they've been muted, and they just move on. Yeah, so whether there's some sort of way to go about it. You did talk a little bit before about the bubble. Mm-hmm. How has it been being like everyone else, outsider looking in? Working with your guys. Like, was there any particular content initiatives that you were trying to get done? Or are they pretty much really focusing on ball at the minute?
The NBA has done a tremendous job, the level of preparation, and not only how quickly they put everything together, but the level of quality that they've done is they've really gone above and beyond in a short time with unknown circumstances. So they've done an excellent job. And honestly, the main way we've been obviously talking to our guys and asking them if they need anything, but we've just been sending a lot of stuff. So we've been working with a lot of brands to kind of send them various products into the bubble, whether that's everything from a spice company, there's a company called SE Spice who was able to send in some stuff there, or HyperX, who we work with, send one of our clients new headphones, just anything like that to make them really feel at home, and anything that they do need, we can get them quickly. Yep. So that's kind of how we've been supporting our guys, very much getting them product and getting them to explore new things and really show and I'm telling the brands this is a great exposure opportunity for you. You're getting into a bubble that collectively, I don't know, you probably know this better than me, but maybe all the NBA players there combined have 1 billion followers on social. I don't know, maybe 1 billion. Can you name a better place? So just getting your product in front of them. And we've had a lot of great partners who've been able to send various items. So that's been a good way to kind of keep in touch and kind of work around opportunities there.
But it's also back to your point of sort of diving in on the players' passions, because they're not getting the things that they're usually getting. Mm-hmm. And so you're actually finding out if someone's saying, hey, Brandon, can you really get me some of these? And you're getting that text, you're like, well, actually I can. And perhaps we should be talking to that brand about how we can get you that info. So I suppose it is sort of cropping up a few opportunities that you can follow up with.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then it's also just such a unique cultural moment. As everyone said, you'll never have this many NBA players in one place at one time. All-Star game doesn't compare. There's literally no other, there's not another time where you'll have everyone there at once. And you have guys being able to watch them as well. So it has a very AAU feel to people.
Yep. And in the digital space, there's always new platforms either popping up or popping off, right? Obviously, over quarantine, TikTok has just gone from strength to strength. Mm-hmm. And now, in the last week, Instagram has come along and released Instagram Reels. How do you go about, I guess, giving advice and telling players about these new platforms? Are you on the front foot in that and saying, hey guys, new platform, you should be jumping on, this looks really good? Or is it more player led? Because a lot of the younger guys, they're on these platforms even before, as soon as they're released and they're testing them out. Do you follow the players in, or do you sort of try to direct them to platforms that you think are going to help them be more marketable?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I try to be I'm very much ahead of it. So when Reels launched last week, my friend at Facebook actually sent me kind of the overview PDF. So that was sent to our client group chat ASAP. Yep. But I'm trying to be very straight up and honest with the guys. And I've done this a few times before where I know certain platforms are good for certain type of players. So if you want to, and if you feel you have the ability and the dedication, I can help you build that. So one of our previous clients was De'Aaron Fox. We helped launch his YouTube channel, got it to 250,000 subscribers, but that was a very heavy lift. And there's other guys that will come out and be like, oh, I want to have a YouTube. This guy has a YouTube. I want it. And then I'm like, all right, I will help you get there. We can do that. But from your end, I'm going to need a commitment of we need every week, ideally, I need 10 minutes of edited high quality content to share. And people really realize that's a really big ask. So that's why NBA YouTube channels that's why Matisse Thybulle, he's done amazing because he's editing his own footage on the ground, which is pretty insane. Yeah. That's an incredible skill to have and to be doing. So sometimes it's player led. And if it is player led, I let guys know like, hey, I have connections at all these companies. Let's get you set up with your ideal handle. Let's get you verified. Let's get you in the monetization program. So really putting them in the best foot forward. But as I said earlier, like I can't create this content for you. I can't do the legwork. I will put you in the best position to optimize what you're doing so you can succeed. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you and your level of commitment.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the same when I've, done work with athlete groups or teams and said, I can tell you about all the platforms, but it only works if you want to work for the platform and the platform works for you.
Yeah.
Like forcing a player to go, okay, can go do TikTok. It's like, well, I don't like dancing and I don't like putting myself on camera. Well, TikTok is not for you.
Yeah.
But if I think we are going to see more, Matisse Thybulle of players who have been content creators or have been dabbling in that and are basketballers and are athletes that go, oh, I can actually do that, because being able to understand the nuances of the platform and how to shoot it and what is interesting is the key piece, because it's really hard to, not every player can be witty and funny and entertaining. It's part of their personality.
Yeah. And a lot of it is the content ideas too, because with this like proliferation of smartphones and everything, like the barriers to creating content has never been easier, which is great. So you kind of have this like onslaught of like athlete content coming out and day in the lives. Like I remember, like I grew up watching like NBA inside stuff with like Ahmad Rashad.
Yep.
And like I loved that. Like that was like a behind the scenes. I got to see how these players lived, and you never saw that before. Now, day in the life videos aren't really as captivating as they once were, just because the space is kind of oversaturated at this point.
Yep.
Like every guy's done day in the life videos. So you really
effectively Instagram stories gives you that as a product. Yeah. Like you could just, you don't need to cut it up. It's like, we know what their life is like. We know every Tuesday LeBron's having tacos. Like that is it is a day in the life. I mean, the thing is, it is funny. Like early on, athletes getting on platforms would want instruction until they'd found their rhythm and cadence and what they would share.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember at one time I was advising a couple of different athletes, and they're like, what should I be posting on Instagram? And the thing about athletes is their lives are so regimented of there's practice, then there's playing, then there's a game, and they've always got someone telling them to do something. And the danger in digital and social is if you start telling them what to do, they just go into I do what I'm told mode.
Yeah.
In some cases, and so I have a case where I was just talking to two guys who were playing the same game, and I said, don't forget, put up your Instagram post before the game that sort of says, I'm looking forward to the game. If you want, take a photo of your kit and your bag and your boots, and say I'm looking forward to the game. And I remember later that day opening up my Instagram feed and seeing two photos practically identical from two guys in opposite teams. The exact same photo of the exact same bag and the exact same copy, because I didn't give them any variety. They just went, oh, I was told to do this, which is fine. But at some point, they've got to show their own personality and figure out their own voice. So I'm sure you've had those same challenges as guys try to find their own voice and figure out how they use social.
Yeah, I try not to micromanage. So especially, and you kind of have to be the intermediary between the brand side, because brands will often push like, hey, like I've had brands send over like some captions where I'm like, I wouldn't even say this. Like this player would definitely not say this. Like this would be super inauthentic and would just not do well. Like they would be trolled in the comments, and then the post would not get good engagement. The athlete would want to delete it because they read those comments and they don't feel good about it. So like I basically give them like a structure, like, hey, here's your talking points, put it in your own words and figure it out. And that's the best way to keep it authentic and keep it so it's a real connection. Because the worst is like, and I imagine you've seen it like after like the NFL draft or the NBA draft, you see like the copy and pasted same posts from like the same guys that got the same deals, and there's no variety, and like the fans just gloss over it.
And then you have the horror cases where the player, actually copies in and says, insert the team that picked you here, please, and thank the city that you got selected from. Yeah. And they just copy and paste it. So, like, mistakes happen and everyone gets roasted for those kind of things. But, yeah, getting that authentic voice from the player and hitting the brand points is the tough piece in this space.
But I almost think, because I was with Markel Fultz, he did that.
Yep.
And I almost think that's genius in the sense that if he planned that, then he knows that will go viral. And the brand is getting all this attention. You're getting all this earned media. Like, they're still showing the post and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was intentional, but if it was, very well
no. You take it as, that's how we planned it, everybody.
Exactly.
Like, when it happens, it's like, no. That's exactly how we planned it. Look how viral it went.
Insert T.
So one of the things I did want to discuss, and was one of the things we discussed on Lunch Club, is your side hustle. Tell us a little bit about Social Chair.
Yeah, so Social Chair is basically an app to make and share plans with your friends. It's an idea I've had for years, and then my friend's an iOS developer, so I started working with him and building it. And it's a really good experience to kind of have a side hustle. And this is something like my day-to-day job is just player marketing, business development. And this is like building an iOS app, submitting it to the App Store, doing product design, doing like user interface, and like all this different stuff that you're not going to work on in your day-to-day. So overall, as an experience, it's been really rewarding because I feel like I've really gained a second skill set that invariably can help me with my current job as well. So a lot of companies will approach us, be like, hey, we want to build like XYZ app, or we want to do like a one label of this, and then I'm able to.
We're getting very close to the player-led, game, and that kind of thing to say, hey, we want to take their brand and put it in a game and send it out to fans. Yeah, we're very, there's been some implementations of that already.
Exactly, yeah, and then you're able to kind of know from a personal perspective, like, okay, first of all, how much they're quoting you is way under. Secondly, they're not considering all the changes you're going to have to do on the back end and for bugs and everything. So that's been a really good experience. And it just started from a problem in my life where I'm very sick of having to text all my friends and figure out what they're doing with plans. So I wanted a central place to just share it, and all my friends would get notified.
So obviously an app like that makes sense until there's a pandemic that says don't go meet people, yeah?
Yeah. Until there's a global pandemic where you're not allowed to go outside.
Why didn't you think of it, Brandon? Come on.
Why didn't I think of it? Yeah. But no, I've been
So the thing is, you obviously ramping up post-pandemic when people do want to organise is the plan?
Yeah, that's going to be the plan. And kind of just, there's been a lot of things. We use like a big Trello board to kind of track everything. And there's like a wish list, which we've been slowly building out things on the wish list that we previously didn't have time for to put into other updates that we now can work on and improve. And I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, why don't you pivot to like doing like Zoom calls? And I just always told them, like, I don't want to build something that's only for a temporary solution, because once this is over, are people going to be doing sporadic Zoom calls? Probably not as much now.
There is potential for that, but I do think like what you are going through with Social Chair is there is a lot of tech and work being done that couldn't be done because the business everyday work has been happening. So I do think coming out of this, there will be a whole bunch of startups that will have accelerated their development for a post-pandemic time. So like there will be this rush of new apps and new innovation that's ready to get people out back to whatever the new normal is. So I think that's going to be exciting. Again, hopefully everyone, please just wear a mask. Let's get to the other side of it. Yeah. Just to wrap things up, Brandon, I want to go through the first through the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I don't remember the first sports event I ever attended, but I would say my favorite one is sophomore year. I was on the baseball team, as I mentioned, and I had a SAT2 subject test in the morning, but we made the city championship for baseball. So I arrived at Dodger Stadium to play this game in like the second inning. I ended up getting a hit. So I always tell people my batting average is 1,000 at Dodger Stadium, and it's probably never going to change. And then we ended up winning in extra innings. So that's my favorite sports memory. Not sure of my.
Well, you joined the club. I bat 1,000 at AT&T Park. I played one game of softball there and got a hit, and I retired. So I'll send you the scoreboard with my name up there. Yeah, it's like I'm just going to retire now.
I hope you have
what's your bat. Yeah, no, just the one at bat. I'm cool. Just drop the bat. I'm done. You would have been a bunch of sports events in your time. Do you have a go-to food or a favorite food memory at a sports event?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm a big Chicago Cubs fan. So
as am I.
Oh, yeah. We discussed that, and which is very cool that people can just choose your teams based without any city allegiance. You can just pick and choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But any of the food at Wrigley or around Wrigley is always really good. Like there's a place called Al's Beef. Obviously, the hot dogs are amazing. Being in the bleachers, that whole experience is really unique, and just the whole ambiance there has really made it special.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you would hope brings people back, like that total experience of being with people. A good ballpark food. The whole atmosphere of a game. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Robinhood, and just because I'm on the West Coast, so the market's open. Usually at 6:30, so I just want to make sure any of my holdings didn't completely bottom out in the morning, and then I'm usually able to start my day unless something very bad happened overnight.
Okay, yeah. Who is someone that the podcast listeners should follow? Whether it's someone that you work with, or a Twitter account, or an author that you really rate that the podcast listeners should check out.
I think if they really want an authentic NBA experience, would just be to follow Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski. He breaks every big story, him and Shams. But even more so, not for the news, for the comments, you really get to see a lot of like the inside jokes of the NBA, and you really get to understand the community that is there, and you really see how much these people miss basketball, and how much, like, there's a guy who has like 300,000 followers. His name is Stephen A. Smith's burner account, and all he does is he instantly replies. You already know him, He replies to Woj or Shams, has a great Stephen A. Smith gif, and everyone starts commenting, he don't miss. And it's just a great community where it's like this outsider would be like, what is this? And then once you're on the inside, you're like, this is part of the community. And like certain things will happen in a game, and you're like, oh man, I got to go check Twitter because this is going to blow up and the whole community is going to go crazy. So that's a really experience.
NBA Twitter is a fun experience, and it has been in this these bubble seeding games. It's been good to be able to watch so multiple games. The last question, you can answer this as yourself from a personal point of view, and maybe also put your agent hat on and from a player point of view. But what social media platform is your MVP? So what's your go-to platform that's working the best for you? And then maybe what is the one that is working the best for your players?
So my personal life would probably be Instagram, because it's just a great way to get in touch with friends and people you've met. Professionally, probably LinkedIn, just because it's a great way to kind of, hey, we worked together on a deal 2 years ago. We just did this really cool integration. Here's it. So it's top of mind. Let's get on a call and check in. And then from a player perspective, so although they're going through a lot of turmoil, Instagram is obviously great, but TikTok, what I've been able to see on that app is pretty extraordinary, because they can manufacture trends like I've never seen before. So I always tell people, like, do you remember the Harlem Shake, when that was like a big dance, and that probably went on for 3 months or however long it went on? I really wonder if that would last more than a week today, because the trends have always kind of happened sporadically and there's never been a science to it. I feel like TikTok has hacked creating trends by basically they do a hashtag, people want to get famous, they do a video within that hashtag. It blows up, and then that goes on for a week, and then people move on to the next one. So that's one where there's a lot of power on TikTok's end to create unique brands.
It is like continual trends, because you're right. Like there was a time when planking was a thing on Twitter, and Harlem Shake, and like there was a few that's like, oh, we're all going to do this thing. Opening a door, and then there's video behind the door, like it happened. So, but on the here we are saying traditional social media, like on those it took a little while, but TikTok just keeps rolling through them. And then they end up being pervasive and coming across to other platforms. But it's really something that really does drive, and I think it's very much for me. TikTok is very much for the content creator more than the influencer. Like you create good content, and it actually gets gets its due reward.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, there's a bit more to play out with the current potential bans or acquisitions. Is Microsoft going to buy it? Is Twitter going to buy it? Is nothing going to happen? Is everyone going to ignore it? Is it all going to change when there's election? Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's obviously the world we live in. Lastly, where can people who are listening to this reach out to you, and what's the best place to find you on the internet?
The best place on my LinkedIn. So just my name / Brandon Curran. That's the best place to connect. I really feel the core part of my job is to always be networking and meeting new people, because we have these athletes who have highly engaged audiences in the 18 to 35 demo that we're able to work with not only traditional brands, but with music companies, social media companies, startups, players, unions, leagues, and really there's no limit. So that's the best place to kind of reach out to me and connect.
Well, terrific. Thank you very much for coming back and reconnecting. It's great to meet you on Lunch Club and then to have you back as a podcast guest. Hopefully, in some time in the future, I'll be over in LA and we can maybe catch up at Chipotle and catch up in real life. Hopefully, and we'll organise it via social chair. There you go. Got all the plugs out. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
All right, appreciate you having me. Have a great rest of your day.
Find out more about Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process at digitaltodollars.com. We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon.
Thanks again to Brandon Curran. Check out some of the things we discussed. That Chipotle video is in the show notes where they punked the young Celtics rookie. But really interesting to talk to Brandon around how athlete is similar to and adjacent to influencer marketing and what they're doing in that space. So really appreciate him sharing some insights there. But as I said before the interview, great to meet him via Lunch Club. As I said, I've been meeting some really interesting people on Lunch Club. Some of them may become podcast guests, some of them may become partners, and some of them may become clients, and some of them may become friends. That's the good part of I'm finding from Lunch Club. Before I wrap up, one of the goals I set in 2020 was to work on big problems. No need to tackle small problems when there's enough big problems around. Did not expect the biggest problem of 2020 to be a pandemic. So a lot of those big problems are now bigger. But that goal hasn't changed. So if you've got a big problem, let's have a chat. Drop me a line, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Lock in a time for a call, sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. If I can't solve the problem, if I can't help you with the problem, I think I'll know someone that can, and I want to help you solve that problem. Send me an email. Let's chat. If you are a sports technology solution provider or someone you think can actually help solve some of those problems, please reach out. I'd like to talk to you about our Sports Geek Amplify series, where we're going to focus on some really smart technology and solutions for the world of sports and dive in a little bit different from a podcast point of view. You can check that out at sportsgeekhq.com/amplify. But what I really want to do is I want to see you as a podcast listener come on the Sports Biz Zoom calls. So go to the Sports Biz Zoom calls by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls. My goal is to get to 1,000 Zoom call attendees. We are currently at 600, which isn't too bad considering this pandemic has been going on for 127 weeks or something like that. It feels like it anyway. But if you've been on a Zoom call, what I'm asking you to do is to invite a friend or a colleague, get them to come along. Because from most of the feedback that I get and most of the feedback that you've given via the surveys, everyone is enjoying themselves, learning a lot, and getting in some valuable networking that has been taken away from us as we can't meet up and go to conferences and the like. So check it out. sportsgeekhq.com is where you can find all those links, including the one to Patreon. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.